We had a real interesting story come out last week regarding Star Wars and the movies that have been made by Lucasfilm since Disney purchased Lucasfilm, and that the profits that Disney made from these movies are actually not as big as we thought. And from what it looks like, Disney has not yet made back the money that they paid George Lucas in order to buy Lucasfilm. I'm on thatparkplace.com report Disney Star Wars movies have not recouped the cost of purchasing Lucasfilm at the box office. A new report details that the Walt Disney Company has failed to recoup the purchase price of Lucasfilm from its various Star Wars and Indiana Jones films. Back in 2012, the Walt Disney Company announced it was purchasing Lucasfilm from George Lucas for $4.05 billion, with Disney paying approximately half of the consideration in cash and issuing approximately 40 million shares at closing. The Disney-owned Lucasfilm would produce a number of films, including their sequel trilogy that would initially make a huge splash at the box office, but over time saw huge declines. The Force Awakens grossed over $2 billion. Its sequel, The Last Jedi, grossed $1.3 billion and change. And then Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, made a little over $1 billion. And The Force Awakens, when it came out, I thought it was fine, but there were some problems. I didn't hate the movie, but the main character, Rey, she kind of learned the Force on her own within an hour. And then the movie was kind of a repeat of Episode 4. And then Episode 8, The Last Jedi, that was basically what killed Star Wars. I remember when I came out of the theater after watching Episode 8, I wasn't really sure what to think about that movie. I definitely did not love the movie. And then as time went on, the more I thought about that movie, the less sense it made. We were all anticipating seeing Luke Skywalker for the first time in, 30 whatever years. And instead they subverted our expectations and completely disrespected him. Rey's character still had the same problem where it didn't seem like she was struggling all that much. The overall plot where there was a slow speed chase in the middle of space, a chase so slow that Finn and Rose could get on a ship, go to light speed to some other planet, and then come right back. The moment I saw that was going to be the premise for this movie, that was when I realized, okay, this isn't going to be that good. In Episode 7, they built up a mysterious villain in Snoke, and in Episode 8, they decided to just kill him off in the middle episode, because apparently subverting our expectations is the mark of a good story. And that was the one thing that really just killed my interest in Episode 9. And then after that, the people at Lucasfilm, people working at Disney, they were calling critics of The Last Jedi names. J.J. Abrams said that people who didn't like The Last Jedi were threatened by female characters or some nonsense like that. And Episode 9, I decided, you know what? No, I don't want to give Disney my money. In between these films, Disney also released Rogue One, which grossed just over $1 billion in theaters. A lot of people like that movie. I honestly didn't care for it that much. The reason why I didn't care for it was, it didn't have that fun tone. It didn't have those fun characters that you're used to seeing in Star Wars. To me, instead, it was a lot of commentary about how the Empire is oppressing people and stuff like that. That movie didn't really feel like Star Wars to me. I mean, the space battle at the end was kind of fun, but beyond that, I didn't really care for it. And Solo, a Star Wars story, which grossed under $400 million in theaters. And this right here, you're talking Star Wars, you're talking the biggest IP out there. There's no excuse for a Star Wars movie flopping. And a lot of why this movie flopped was because The Last Jedi turned a lot of fans away. But I'll continue. So the total box office for all these movies is just under $6 billion, $5.9 billion right here. However, that box office does not factor in the costs that Disney incurred to make all of those films, nor does it factor in marketing costs, nor the cut that theaters take of the box office grosses. Carolyn Reed at Forbes has not only crunched some of the numbers, but she's also provided production budget information for these films and concludes that the films have not recovered the cost to purchase Lucasfilm, meaning it has not made back $4 billion in profit. And this right here, this is where the initial report comes from Forbes. The article is pretty long and it goes into a lot of other things, and there are some factors that are missing from the article. So I'm reading from thatparkplace.com, their report on it. Thatparkplace.com is a great website, folks. WDW Pro's there, he's a great insider. John Trent's there, he's a great writer for them. He used to be at Bounding into Comics, that's another great website. But this article at That Park Place, it includes some other factors that aren't really included in the Forbes article, so I'm going to be reading from this article instead. But to sum up the numbers for the movies, Reed reveals that Disney spent $567 million on The Force Awakens. And folks, that is the production budget. $567 million production budget. However, because they filmed in the United Kingdom, the company received a significant tax return, which reduced the net cost of the film to $475 million. Similarly, Reed reports that the net cost of The Last Jedi was $320 million. The Rise of Skywalker's cost was $448 million. Rogue One cost the company $248 million, and Solo cost $287 million. And this is one thing about just Disney in general. Their budgets for their movies, they are enormous. Whenever we see the initial production budgets for their movies, they're typically at least $200 million, sometimes pushing $300 million. And that's the initial budget. That doesn't count the cost for reshoots or anything like that. I'm guessing these production budget numbers, they are including reshoots. Reed then comes to the conclusion that The Force Awakens made $560 million in profit, $559.6 million. The Last Jedi had $347 million. Rogue One had $281 million. The Rise of Skywalker had $89 million. And Solo lost $91 million. And this Solo losing $90 million, at a glance I am a little skeptical of that number. We see right here at boxofficemojo.com, the overall number for the movie worldwide was $393 million. Then right here we see the cost of Solo, $287 million, and that's not including how much they spent for marketing. So I don't know, I find it hard to believe that Solo only lost $90 million, but there might be something I'm missing here. But anyway, that means all combined, the films only generated $1.1, almost $1.2 billion in profit. Now to be clear folks, overall those movies, they still made Disney money. But with the budgets being as big as they are, Disney didn't make as much money as we thought. Reed notes that this is $2.8 billion short of the purchase price of Lucasfilm. However, Reed also shares that her calculations do not include the massive marketing costs of the movies as well as the cost of Star Wars streaming shows and theme park attractions, which also don't have revenue streams directly connected to them, as visitors get access to all the rides for the price of a single ticket. Furthermore, she notes that her calculations do not include the costs and revenue Disney incurs and earns on the Star Wars merchandise, DVDs, and Blu-rays. Of note, Reed's calculations also do not include other Lucasfilm failures such as Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which Reed claims lost Disney $134.2 million at the box office. Yeah, so that movie, that makes Lucasfilm's profits under Disney even smaller. It also does not include the Disney Plus failure that is Willow. The show was canceled after one season. Not only was it canceled, but it was completely removed from the platform along with a number of other programs as part of a $1.8 billion impairment charge. This report flies in the face of Disney's claim that since Disney and current CEO Bob Iger purchased Lucasfilm, that the 5 Star Wars films it has produced has generated a 2.9 times return on investment. This claim was made as part of Disney's plan for shareholder value creation in March 2024, and this is it right here. It's a 67-page PowerPoint presentation. The whole point of the PowerPoint presentation was basically don't vote for Nelson Peltz. This was at the time of the Board of Governors election, which Nelson Peltz lost. Financial analyst Valiant Renegade, another great guy to go to, previously addressed Disney's claim that the franchise had earned a 2.9 times return on investment, saying, Disney has selectively edited their accounting. They've selectively edited their capex or capital expenditures. They've selectively edited the revenues from the Lucasfilm purchase and the subsequent Star Wars products to come up with this number. He then went on to point out Disney's fine print on the slide, noting that it only reflects a ratio between revenue and investment on titles released following Disney's acquisition of the IP. Revenue reflects aggregate 10-year revenue streams, both generated and expected, directly associated theatrical releases, including theatrical, home, entertainment, TV, pay and free, and consumer products. Valiant specifically took issue with Disney's claim that their 2.9 times return on investment is based on expected revenue. He states there's a great deal of assumption here on the part of Disney. Next, he noted a number of other costs that the Walt Disney has incurred regarding Star Wars outside of theatrical releases. It does not include the roughly $2.5 billion that Disney spent to build out 2 Galaxy's Edge theme parks, along with 1 failed Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser hotel. And the Galaxy's Edge theme park, from what I've been hearing, not a whole lot of people have been going there. I remember when it first came out, it did not have Luke Skywalker at the park, it did not have Vader, it didn't have anything from the original trilogy. It was all stuff from Disney Star Wars movies. And it featured characters from Disney comics or Disney Star Wars stories, characters that most Star Wars fans have never heard of. And also, according to the data, it would not include the nearly $2 billion that Disney has also spent in addition to that $2.5 billion on making 10 Disney Plus shows, 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, 3 seasons of The Bad Batch, a season of Clone Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Book of Boba Fett, and how about the whopper, the $250 million Andor show? No, none of that is actually included because Disney probably can't find enough attributable revenue towards those pieces of IP capex to justify the figures they're giving us in this report he shared. So the main point here, folks, when you look at how Lucasfilm has done since Disney bought it, it doesn't look like they've really made a profit since they bought Lucasfilm from George Lucas. When the Disney Star Wars trilogy came out, it was very highly anticipated by fans, myself included, and yes, a lot of people saw it, there's no denying that. But one problem with Disney in general is that their production budgets tend to be so big that it ends up cutting into their profits. And I mean it significantly ends up cutting into their profits. So it looks like these Star Wars movies, they didn't make as much as we thought. And then you have to add to that Disney lost the goodwill of a lot of Star Wars fans as a result of that trilogy they made. I mean, you do not know how many Star Wars fans out there now think that Star Wars is dead. And what that means is any movies that Disney makes in the future, there's not going to be a whole lot of interest. They have a new show coming out in, month and a half now, less than that, called The Acolyte. It looks terrible. It doesn't really resemble Star Wars. I mean, there were some lightsabers in the first look trailer we had, but beyond that, to me, it just looked like a generic sci-fi show. They're making a new movie with Rey coming back, where she's going to be rebuilding the Jedi Order or something like that. In the sequel trilogy, a lot of fans were anticipating the return of Luke, Han, and Leia, and Disney is not going to have that same advantage with this new Rey movie coming. The character of Rey was not well written in the Disney trilogy, and to be clear, that's not Daisy Ridley's fault, that's the writer's fault. You know, Disney's doing a live-action remake of Snow White, and there's a lot of controversy around that movie. With that movie, people don't like the actress who's going to be playing Snow White, Rachel Zegler. She's made a lot of comments that have made fans mad. Daisy Ridley in Star Wars, on the other hand, as far as I've seen, people like her. But the character that they had Daisy Ridley play, the writers at Lucasfilm did not do a good job of making her a good character. And with this upcoming Rey movie, that character of Rey, she's going to have to stand entirely on her own. She's not going to have Luke Skywalker or any characters from the original trilogy to lean back on. So yeah, I don't see that movie doing very well. So folks, this is interesting. It looks like Disney hasn't really made back the money they've paid to buy Lucasfilm. And the biggest opportunity they had to make a profit off of Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, that's gone and that's past us. They didn't make as much money as we thought. That trilogy lost the goodwill of a lot of Star Wars fans. And now we're in a position where there's really nothing for Star Wars fans to look forward to, and that's not a good sign for Disney. It's not a good sign for them in terms of trying to make a profit. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care until then.